Alrighty. Well, now that core reworks have dropped over on Conquest of Azeroth, I figured now's a good time to follow up on that old DPS video. Uh, and update it, really. So, now the basics of the core rework is that every class now has its own core kit, or every spec, rather. And we're talking about Blood, Son of Arugal, which is fancy new user interface here. Select your spec. And for people who don't know, Son of Arugal is basically the werewolf Worgen spec or class, and Blood is kind of the bastard son vampire kind of thing tacked on to the end. It's got lots of cool blood magic and all kinds of dark fantasy stuff. If you're like me, you're a huge fan of blood magic because it's never appeared in any game in any real good form, except for like a select few obscure games that didn't do too well. Well, this is your treat. So, if you've seen my older videos and streams, you can tell from the hotbar here, I've got a lot more going on than I used to. And I want to just talk about the shiny new stuff that we didn't have before. So, right now, consume, liquefy, fleshcraft, aneurysm, vestigial muck. These are all brand new. Well, not brand new. They were in the game before, but they're in the core kit now. You don't have to talent them. So you get a little bit of AoE, defensive, extra healing, and an interrupt, counterspell, and a root. So some options. This is just for DPS oriented stuff. I'll talk about some healer stuff later. These are all kind of some good utility things, just kind of cover some bases. We've also got Shadowfang Ritual and Dark Liturgy. Dark Liturgy sucks ass, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. But Ritual is a phenomenal cooldown for both healer and DPS because it gives some nice speed and haste. And it also increases the healing you take, or your target takes. And then healer also got Panacea and Nostrum, which are some new dispels because the class did not have any dispels, and also Vampire Bite, which is our own resurrection. And I have not gotten a chance to actually use this yet, but I hear it's kind of neat. Though, unfortunately, it doesn't have any ranks, so you get raised with barely any health and mana. Kind of stuck like that. You have to heal back to full real quick. And, well, let's see here. So we got pack hunting as well, which is something that all the specs have. Turns all your party members into Worgen, and everybody moves real quick. It's actually kind of busted flag carriers, or for assisting your flag carrier. And new thing is that you can actually just toggle off Worgen form. And since transforming into a Worgen is a leap, Blood can use this for mobility, and you can target your allies with it and your enemies. So you can just do real quick engagements. This. Get back into caster form. Very loud. I'm glad I had my game audio down. And for Blood DPS, you've got a little addendum here on Taldaram's Torment, which used to be Curse of Blood. So while it's ticking down, you can actually deal a ton of damage, build some rage. The best way to do this is to use Life Drinker. Put that on there, and watching those stacks tick up. Max is at 10, and that Taldaram's Torment just did 1.7k damage. For comparison, What does a base torment do? 434. And this is in pure stamina gear, so I don't have all that much spell power. Though it does have some stamina scaling on it, so full disclosure. So that is huge mechanic for DPS that you definitely want to maximize on whenever you can. Unfortunately, it does reinforce pressing Life Drinker again if we're not pressing it enough. So, I mean, it meshes well, I guess. I can say that, even if it is kind of boring and linear again. But it does bring good damage. And you're going to be spamming this on cooldown anyway because you need the Rage or Life Drinker. Yeah. So, that about covers our new shit. Let's look at the talents here. Most of this is exactly the same. If you've seen my build from the previous video or just me toggling it during streams or whatever, the talents are all the same. There's nothing new here. It's just been stuff taken out of it and put into our core. So the build from bottom to top is mostly the same as what it was. There's some rearrangements here. We got Blood Moon Power in Tier 2, which is nice, because now DPS gets to use stamina bonus from this. Before, it was too high up, and we would be forced to take these two. Well, if you wanted to use Anguish, you would have to take this, because the bonus Exsanguination stacks are required. But yeah, most of this is mostly the same here. You still want Vampiric Thirst, so you can use a quick Fleshcraft. And the spell haste is massive because you can stack that with Ritual and you'll have super fast Life Drinker. But these past couple days I've been running, like I showed, I've got max stamina gear on. It's just really ugly looking gear that looks nothing like caster gear. But it's got lots of stamina on it. See, lots of stamina. I need a new belt though. And I've got 385 total. And that looks like, well, including the 8% buff from Blood Moon Power, it looks like 6.5k HP. A lot of fucking HP for a caster. Which balances out because we're spending our health on every bit of rage except for the stuff we get from Consume and Torment. And you're going to be drawing a lot of ire for playing this class. Well, I am. Know me. And since you're going to be spending so much health on everything you do, that be putting up a defensive, trying to root somebody, trying to do damage to build rage so that you can, do everything else in the kit that matters. It definitely helps to have a lot of health, which is why you already geared some stamina to begin with. But what happened is this core passive that we got. Blood magic used to be 40% conversion, now it's 50% conversion, so we get a little bit of extra. And which is why we've got 400 bonus damage stamina gear now. And because there is some stamina scaling on some of the spells, it's not terrible. Because this almost exclusively scales with stamina. Sanguine Shield, it allows me to give me, little 1,000 extra HP, effective HP. Not counting the 10% magical healing buff that, when comboed with Life Drinker or Fleshcraft, gets really nasty real quick. But, I mean, you're sacrificing a lot of damage by going into stamina. But it's fun, because, you don't die unless you're getting 3v1'd. And let's see. So we got, Atheron's Anguish. It used to be Blood Bomb. So it's the same. You just need use Exsanguination stacks for it. It's the only thing DPS uses it for because transfusion heals for jack shit in PvP. because of a couple different reasons. The self-damage is not mitigated by PvP mod, but the healing output is, even though it's a flat HP percentage transfer, it's annoying. I've tried to get it changed to no avail. So, yeah, unless you're a healer using Gorge to power this up, you're not going to touch transfusion, really. Or if you're like after a fight and you have leftover Exsanguination, you can use it for that. But otherwise, DPS is only going to use Exsanguination for Atheron's Anguish, which is the only DPS option in the first tier. On the healing side of things, they haven't really gained anything except the dispels. Really, they can't do damage because healer is based on Gorge, which cuts the damage down completely. So you're not going to be trying to damage somebody as healer. You're going to be just focusing keeping yourself alive, and that works if you can get Gorge off, but the second your opponent knows all of your healing is based on Gorge, they save their single interrupt or stun or whatever they need to break your cast, and Gorge falls apart, you can't heal, you die. And that's kind of the problem with healer, has been the problem with healer, still is. And haven't seen any sort of indication that that's going to change. So healer is not very valid in PvP right now. Very good in PvE, brain dead in PvE even, because nothing is going to stop you from getting Gorge off. And once you have Gorge off, your heals are absolutely bonkers, and you'll never run out of resources because you can just use Gorge on transfusion on yourself, and you'll just heal yourself back up to full after you've spent like a bunch of health on blood tap to build up your rage to cast Gorge in the first place. So, yeah, in PvE it's super good, but second you try to jump into a BG, you're screwed. Unless your enemies just don't know how Blood Healer works, in which case, have fun. Dark Liturgy, which should be a very helpful heal because it's the instant cast heal of our kit. I don't even keep it on my bar anymore because it's bugged right now. Rank 2 Liturgy just sucks because you see it says Stamina, Intellect, and Spell Power scaling there. Nope, not on rank 2. Rank 1, yes. Rank 1 actually is much better than rank 2, but me being the bright mind that I am, thinking that this was fixed, I ranked up, and now I'm screwed. So that's not going to happen anytime soon. Maybe if I change specs or something to unlearn everything, I can fix it, but a lot of work, and I don't care enough about healer to really fix that. Well, I care about healer, but Dark Liturgy is so irrelevant in PvE, which is the only use case for healer right now. It's a good panic heal, I guess, but we're really not going to be using it that much because Gorge just powers everything else up, and Transfusion's cast time is so fast. Like, why bother? Especially because using a staff make that cast time even less a factor. Healer is in a sad spot. It needs help. The dispels are also kind of trash. They cost health, but they don't do anything interesting. The AoE magic removal is it's kind of cool, but it's one magic effect, exclusively magic. And, I mean, Panacea is on a really short cooldown. That health cost racks up. And it's just doing one disease or one poison at a time. And on SoA, that kind of stuff gets applied in, like, tens. You'll have Necro dump, like, 5 diseases on you in an instant. Venomancer will drop, like, 20 poisons on you. And you can't cleanse that like this. So, I don't know, maybe if they change Panacea to be, like, if you're Spirit main, it cleanses all poison or all disease effects, but maybe give it like a longer cooldown or something. That could work. But aside from that, there's just nothing about these two spells that says blood magic outside of the health cost. And the health cost really isn't anything. there's cool stuff, sort of risk-based mechanics around everything else, where you can tell like the defensive spells are meant to kind of complement. They're actually offensive in nature because you want to use Life Drinker with Sanguine Shield, Liquefy damages and roots enemies to open them back up for more damage once you step away. Um, Everything just kind of funnels back into this HP spend loop. Um, there's no sort of like unique reward feeling for spending health on these outside of like, the tiny 3-second cooldown on Panacea, which is nuts, but I don't see it being too useful outside of maybe some specific cases in raids. So overall, though, Blood is largely the same as it was, but it's got a much more solid foundation. You're not going to have to waste away talents on things like Liquefy, which was mandatory, and you've got Aneurysm and Muck in your core, so you can fight against a caster uh, and have a fighting chance. And especially because you've got Curse of the Worgen mobility, so you can jump on them, maybe use Liquefy offensively to root them in place and ground them, and then you can put your Torment on and slap them with Life Drinker to build up a huge damage burst to open up with. This also helps against all kinds of ranged classes, having that leap. And it also is a good escape tool if get jumped by a bunch of enemies and you can't out sustain that kind of damage, but there's an ally nearby you can jump to. That's also nice. Um, but we still have a really significant weakness, which I feel is a little unfair. Feels like it's something tied to the design of the classes that exploit it, which is the lack of pushback protection in our kit. Like the only time you get pushback protection is if you are gearing absolute maximum stamina and pick Sanguine Shield as a talent. The only time you can deal with a class like Necromancer, Ranger, Reaper, Monk, uh, you know, all the classes that dump rapid hits on you really quick, because they can keep even Fleshcraft when you've got maximum Vampiric Thirst, so it's like a half a second cast time, and they can keep knocking that back and make it last like a second and a half, 2 seconds. And that's brutal because, Fleshcraft is that panic button that you press once you've taken a bunch of damage, and it heals you back up and it gives you a chance to life drink your way out of it. But if you're stuck in this single cast time with Fleshcraft, and you can't do a whole lot about it except cancel it and then just eat the damage, like, well, what's the point? So right now, it's feeling like full stam DPS is kind of where I need to be because it gives me the extra tool of pushback protection through Sanguine Shield. Even though it cuts my damage so harshly. Um, but when it comes to survivability, I guess that's king, huh? Um, there's also the change. I don't know if this is an intended change, but it's a change nonetheless. Blood Moon Blast used to generate 8 or 12 rage when you were in Intellect main stat as compensation for caster having the health cost. That is no longer the case. Now generates 8 rage. So that is the same as the other specs. Means we have to rely on other sources of rage, which means we're going to be hiding very far back, spamming Torment on CD, getting those little 20 rage pops. We can't use Blood Tap because in PvP we can't heal that back with Transfusion. And Life Drinker is not that good, where we can start a fight at 50% HP. Consume, we also have to rely on that, but Consume has a short radius, it's 15 yards, so you kind of have to jump in to a group, get it off, and hope you can get back out. because blood is kind of a beacon. We're very, very oppressive if we're left alone, because we can single out and melt a single target with things like blood sores and life drinker, and that's where we excel, is we cripple one specific target, and that can be pretty disruptive because we're doing it from a safe distance. But we're also a big target because we have that giant red beam linking us to whoever we're using life drinker on. And they've also changed the visual for Blood Moon Blast to give us another giant red beam to point us out. It's a little bit less significant as life drinker, but it's still there. But yeah, we're kind of in this weird spot where we have to play like a coward, and it's annoying. So that aside, I know we're in a period where Liquid has asked for a bunch of feedback about like where we would like to see these specs go, because there's a lot of stuff that's going to be added to the talents to fill out what used to be there and is now in the core. And you can definitely tell looking at this tree that there is not much in the way of choice, because this is supposed to support two separate specs in one, support DPS and healer. And right now, both of them have pretty much singular paths in a given context, PvP or PvE. Well, healer is only PvE. And the only difference is here that a PvE DPS would take is they just wouldn't take shield and thirst, and instead they would take well, yeah, they wouldn't take Scion either. They would take Fang, Harvester, and Cup Runneth Over, because that would give even more life drinker damage, and yeah, Cup Runneth Over is more life drinker damage. I don't. Anguish would probably not even be used, because the problem of Exang is just not enough with Anguish right now. At the base 8 stacks reduces it to like 2 seconds if you're using a staff, which you will never do in PvE. So that's a long time right now in any PvE content. It's 2 seconds, over 2 seconds to cast. Because people move really quick right now. Maybe once damage is toned down or in like higher end content, that will change. I don't know. Anguish doesn't really give you that much damage reward, but yes. And healer's got no options at all. You go from Flesh Weaver, Blood Tap, Power, maybe Shield. But they would just jump straight to Scion. Their goal is to get to Gorge. They would take Harvester, Gorge. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, one extra choice here, and it's probably going to be Shield or Malevolence. If they're in a raid boss situation, Malevolence definitely helps, because you can keep unruly DPS threat down. Shield otherwise is a good choice, just to, protect your tank. And everything else is just mandatory because you need Blood Tap to build Rage. Harvester is required in any situation where there is out of combat downtime, because you can build your Rage above 100. Means you can cast Gorge and still have Rage left over for things like, well, it's not going to be enough Rage, but you can get quicker back up to use Ritual or Liturgy if Liturgy is ever fixed. But that will also be important after we get to the next phase and we get Bathed in Blood, because you're going to be using Life Drinker after Gorge for more AoE healing. So we're in another situation, just have no choice. Even though we've gotten more of a foundation to build from, there's still no choice in the talents. So looking forward, one thing for DPS I want to see is all of our sustain diversified off of Life Drinker. Life Drinker should absolutely be a major part of our sustain, but it should not be the only button we want to press at any given moment. That is the problem right now. It is all of our damage and all of our sustain in one button. We want Blood Sores to buff Life Drinker. We want Essence Harvester to buff Life Drinker. We want Cup Runneth Over to buff Life Drinker. Exsanguination only exists for Anguish if we take Scion. Otherwise, it's all Life Drinker. We're building Rage to cast Life Drinker. Everything. So, we've got other damage spells in this kit. We've got Consume, Vampiric Fang, Anguish. And these three, I feel like should be way more focused on. Fang is called Vampiric Fang. Consume is called Consume. These two could be very easy picks for leech mechanics. I think bonuses on hitting a bleeding target, or well, in Fang's case, maybe a target that's affected by Torment, or maybe they're rooted from Muck, you know, something like that. And Consume, yeah, Consume could be the target, like however many people you spread Hemo to, and then you hit Consume and you get some leech out of it. That could be a cool little combo. And in PvP specifically, self-damage needs to be PvP modded. If we're going to be nerfing our returns on healing for like transfusion, it's ridiculous that the self-damage isn't changed. And for things, I know Reaper in particular has a lot of max HP based costs that are balanced around that HP cost in PvE, and then you get into PvP and you're taking a massive chunk out of that damage, and you're getting to a point where you're dealing as much damage or more damage to yourself than target. That was the case for a while for Blood. But Blood has a lot of min or base HP based costs, which kind of circumvent that issue. And thankfully, if these things were max HP, like Sanguine Shield used to be a max HP based cost, that was nasty. Yeah. So I also think that the PvP mod on transfusions healing is stupid. It's fixed HP. So if you're not going to remove, or if you're not going to apply a PvP mod to the self damage, remove it from the healing. Max HP based transfer. 8% for 8%. I don't see why that needs to be modified in any way. Exsanguination, yes, can buff it. Gorge, yes, can buff it. But that's still a very flat number, modified it every which way, in a way that can be countered very clearly. So, there's also Vampiric Thirst, which only is used for Fleshcraft. But whenever Fleshcraft is on its CD, and you're still building these stacks, you just don't have any use for them. So maybe synergy with Vampiric Thirst and Vampiric Fang. No? Maybe using Vampiric Fang takes a stack. There's a little bit of healing. Maybe Life Drinker can eat stacks as it goes down, kind of like Blood Sores, or maybe Transfusion can take it. You know, who knows? It's something to use them on. Something you just, you know, think for Exsanguination. Other uses for Exsanguination, things that take maybe not all of them, maybe some of them, you know, or require a certain number to use, and it just takes that many. Ways to just play with our resources that aren't just all or nothing. Because that's kind of cool about Life Drinker, is that it's a progressive rage drain. So you can choose how much you want to put into it. I think that kind of concept of how much do we want to play with our health, how much do we want to play with our exsanguination, how much do we want to play with, you know, any given resource that we can acquire. That's sort of playing with greed in blood magic. I would also like to see some variety in our debuffs, and bleeds and stuff like that. Because right now we just throw hemo and just kind of go AFK, and life drinker away. Everything we're expected to just keep life drink or keep hemo up, and that's trivial now. Especially I think because of a bug. Life Drinker is not supposed to tick chemo. I'm almost certain, but you can basically infinitely extend chemo with Life Drinker. See, it's gone above the base duration because of that. So yeah, it's especially Brain Dead now, but even then, it's 10 rage every once in a while. I would like to see more tools we can use to apply debuffs, and just having more debuffs means more possible mechanics with our offensive spells. Maybe work with our dispels like Panacea and Nostrum, and have ways to maybe transfer debuffs to an enemy, or take a debuff on us and convert it into something. Uh, you know, there are a lot of things that we can do that currently just are barren right now. Just literally just a basic dispel that costs health. It's kind of lame. I know, like even Stormbringer's dispel has like a unique mechanic to it. Um, on the healer side, I just want to see Gorge gutted to hell. It's way too polarizing. You go from completely dog shit heals, unless you're like max Exsanguination stacks, uh, in PvE specifically, in PvP no. And then you Gorge, and then all of your heals are the absolute best in the game, single target. And yeah, you're either shit or a god, and I kind of hate it because Gorge doesn't care what your gear is, so it kind of takes away any sort of unique, any sort of variety or potential in the kit in the way it currently works. I like the idea of spending, rage to build yourself up and buff it. That's fine. I like that Bathe in Blood is going to turn the Gorge stacks into a resource next phase. Uh, but as it is, Gorge is just too strong, and the rest of our kit is way too weak as healers. Um, so we need, Liturgy to be fixed and buffed, and then we need Transfusion and Exsanguination combinations, more ways to use Exsanguination, just maybe a spammable heal that costs health, that's not max HP based, and just, is just a decent heal that's kind of all reliable. Or maybe something that's like a reverse life drinker, where we channel our health into somebody else without, and maybe cast things during that, kind of like a monk, Mistweaver monk. Uh, that's something like Bloody Oath right now. It turns Liturgy into a spammable with a lower rage cost. What if it turned Liturgy into Reverse Life Drinker, where it turns into a channel, we lock onto a target, and then we can either have like that life link to our tank or whoever is taking damage, because PvP is random, and maybe focus on healing somebody else during that channel. And you can make the channel weak, but it's just something else, something more that's not Gorge and stupid. Um, because right now you need to build up Exsanguination stacks for Transfusion. You need to build Rage for Gorge. And that's pretty much the healer gameplay right now. You're just using Transfusion when you have Exsang, because you're getting Exsang from using Blood Tap, and because of all the aggro you're building from Gorge being way too strong. And yeah, you're just spending that on Gorge transfusions, which will heal everybody up to full in one cast. So it just kind of trivializes the way healer plays right with the way it is, and there's so much more that can be done. And bouncing off of Gorge being a very big mechanic for healer, I would love to see something in that vein for DPS, because healer has Exsanguination and Gorge all to themselves. DPS has barely a use for Exsanguination. and everything else is built on just individual spells. There's no unifying, glue. There's nothing to tie everything together. Um, so looking at what we have coming in the future, Vampire form has like a withdrawal mechanic. So you'll take self damage the longer you're in Vampire form, and you keep it up. You maintain it by leeching, and that will knock off your withdrawal stacks. So why don't we somehow expand that outside of just Vampire form and tie it to how we loop spending health and getting it back in general, or tie it to a passive that gives bonus damage based on our missing HP, or something that really amps up that feeling of pushing spending HP to the brink and then kind of dialing it back and pulling back to full, because we've got this interesting dance of spending HP and healing it back. Even if it's not as diverse as I would like it to be, it's still a cool, engaging loop. But there could be, more of an actual mechanic to it other than just Blood Moon Blast until Life Drinker. And that's just what I would love to see. I want to see more mechanical density to this spec. Because right now, everything is just Rage and Life Drinker. But I'm saying a lot of negative shit. That's just because I've been with the spec for so long, and I've seen it evolve, and I've just been in this constant loop of playing, and it all just boils down to Life Drinker. But at the same time, it's a solid spec. It's strong in PvP. It has the tools to 1v1 basically anybody. Uh, it struggles against, rapid hits. It can't do much of anything against damage reduction classes like Rune Master. It can struggle with Monk very heavily because they have very long-lasting damage reduction. Um, and also other classes with heavy self-healing, like Sun Cleric, other Sons of Arugal. But generally, it can very much hold its own now because it can counter spells. You can keep yourself up reliably now that you can talent into Blood Moon Power, Thorns, and you have Fleshcraft Core now, so you have to spend on that. You can just use Vampiric Thirst, and you're good. So once you learn your rage management, you're going to be a very powerful caster on the field. But this isn't the only class I've played in my time on CoA. I've played Duality Chronomancer, I played Rime Necromancer, I played Draconic Pyromancer, Wind Stormbringer. I'm in the process of picking up some melee classes even. But those casters that I just named, Chrono, Necro, Pyro, Stormbringer, those all have very specific mechanics that tie everything together, even across specs. And well, no, duality is literally has its own thing with order and chaos, and that's not a whole lot different from the way kind of go back and forth with blood, with self healing and damage. But blood doesn't have anything like that. It doesn't have order and chaos. It doesn't have minions and death chill. It doesn't have breath charges. It doesn't have static. It has health and life drinker. That's it. And, it's simple, it's effective, but it could be a lot more. And as the biggest fan of blood magic on the server, I guess, I want to see it get there. I may not have all the answers in my suggestions. I can't claim to be a game designer or know a whole lot about class balance, but I know when something's not feeling right. And while blood is still fun, it's the best it's been. We've got a lot of room for improvement. So let's get at it. I hope y'all will give blood a shot, throw a bit of feedback in on the Discord, try some other classes, have fun. Thanks for watching.